What if the path to living a more vibrant and empowered life, full color, wasn't about doing more, but doing things in a way that matters? Welcome to Say Yes with Kat. If you're ready to move from surviving to thriving and you want doable tools that honor your whole self, mind, body, and spirit, you're in the right place. Are you ready to say yes? Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome to episode 14 of Say Yes with Kat. Today, I've got my partner in wisdom, Cynthia, with me in the studio.
Hey everyone, so happy to be here for this one. Kat and I have been reflecting on something that's come up for us in our own lives and really hoping that it resonates with a lot of women out there as well.
Yeah, we talk a lot with our friends, with our clients about this point that comes up for people. And sometimes there's more than one, but it's when life creates this sudden space. Maybe it comes after a job change or a divorce. Maybe the kids have moved out, you've gotten a diagnosis, or you've just had a personal revelation. At first, that new space feels like freedom. And then one day it doesn't. And suddenly you feel untethered, like you've just lost your identity.
I think it makes so much sense to feel that way. I've been through a lot of change in the past few years, empty nest, divorce, moving to a place I didn't know anyone, a new relationship. So I realized that we live inside these bubbles of routines. There's roles, responsibilities, expectations, and then one of these bubbles pop and it's disorienting. It's like, bam, who am I? You know, you're really kind of a little bit lost.
Yeah, it's a real thing people go through. But here's the beautiful part. You can make the decision to lean into that discomfort. So we start slowly. It's sometimes even an awkward journey, but it's a journey we're starting of rediscovery, where we don't just find ourselves, but we may often be meeting ourselves for the first time.
Yeah, and for both of us, this journey's led to a place where we truly like who we're becoming.
Yeah.
Yes, we still meet amazing women and think, I'd love to be her when I grow up.
Yeah.
We say that sometimes, actually. But now we're also just happy to be in our own skin, learning and growing and experiencing new things.
Yeah. So we talked about this before our show, and I asked you, what supercharged shift helped you when you were sort of starting this season of identity rediscovery? And you said something to me that was really simple, but is really powerful.
For me, it was connection, and that's the word I said to you, connection. Yep. Just putting myself out there again, trying to be social, even when it felt uncomfortable, even when it felt like I didn't want to even be out in the world. I decided to start to engage people I encountered, the person in line next to me, for example, just saying hi or something small to the person, which really wasn't in my norm to do that.
Yeah. I think that idea of connecting socially makes a lot of sense. And it ties in really beautifully with one of the 8 pillars of health, which is being social. What we've learned about these pillars is that social connection is not just a bonus, but it's actually this basic human need. But let's be honest, when we're in the thick of feeling like that space does not feel like freedom anymore, the idea of getting out there and being social can really start to feel impossible.
Totally. I used to say things to myself, I'm not a people person, or I felt too depressed to leave the house or even really want to get out of bed sometimes. And honestly, that's where I was. But connection doesn't always mean a party or a big group. Sometimes it starts with just replying to a message, saying yes to a coffee, joining an online group. And as I mentioned, starting small conversations. I ended up meeting a very close friend of mine in a grocery store, which just started with a small conversation.
Yeah. Yep. And that friend introduced us. So yay for being social.
Yay.
So I think this resonates with people, this idea of being social, and they understand that it's important. But I think we have to dig a little bit further. We have to understand that to even get to that place where you can take that first step, you have to start to understand what's getting in the way first. So we're going to dive in. There's going to be a lot of information. So I want to let the audience know now that we have a free companion workbook that goes along with this episode. So let's dive in. There are 5 key emotions that tend to pop up when we are in the middle of this change. There's anger, anxiety, worry, fear, and grief. And they can start to feel like this cement on our feet just when we're trying to walk our new path.
And those emotions are totally normal. You're supposed to feel them. But if we stay stuck in them too long, they start writing our story for us. We feel them and we start creating these narratives for ourselves that aren't healthy.
Exactly. And when I was in that place, that's when I started to pull in my Qigong training. And it also showed me why I love traditional Chinese medicine so much. So in TCM, there's this basic idea that everything is energy, and that includes emotion. But the energy of each of these emotions also has a balancing virtue, which is a higher frequency of feeling that can help restore the harmony in your system. Think of it like this. We're not trying to erase these emotions. We're just trying to rebalance the energy of them with the virtue. So we're going to walk you through these 5 key emotions and the virtues that pair with them and talk with you about how we use them in our own healing work. And as we do, we want you to pay attention to what's resonating, what's making you uncomfortable, because that's your body saying, hey girl, this right here, this is where I want you to do some work. So let's dive in. Let's start with a scenario. You're sitting in the DMV or the MVA, depending on your state. You're minding your own business, and suddenly a child speaks the word we all know and fear, no. Uh-oh. You start thinking to yourself. And as you predicted, behind that no comes this building of a full-out anger outburst. The kid's face is red. They're pissed off. They're throwing whatever they can get their hands on. Now imagine an adult approaches the child and starts mimicking the same thing. They're shouting, they're throwing things, their big adult face starts turning red. And I'm sure you are thinking to yourself right now, that is not going to help. Now, I want you to imagine instead, the adult approaches the child, they get down on their level face to face, and they really take the time to look at them, to make that child feel seen, and then they give them a hug. Oh, game changer. That moment of love and compassion I just described to you cools the whole situation down, and the angry energy dissipates out of the room. This is a very clear example to me of how we and our bodies all inherently know that love is the counterbalance virtue to the emotion of anger. Anger and frustration, they show up really early in our life. When we're told no as a child, when we get a little bit older and we start to compare what we have with what the other kids have, when we push down our initial reactions of who we want to be so that we can fit in with the rules of society, when we suck it up and we smile. Now, there are good reasons to allow some of this anger and frustration in our life. It can motivate us to achieve our goals. It could trigger us to take steps towards self-improvement, and it can teach us to establish and communicate healthy boundaries. But we don't want to experience too much of this for prolonged periods, because that's going to lead to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. It weakens our immune system, and it really messes with our digestion. And quite honestly, it's not the best thing for relationships. So as I mentioned, the virtue here is love. It's my absolute favorite, no surprise. I want you to think about how quickly the feeling of anger leaves your body and your mind when you think about someone you love. So the supercharged shift here is if anger and frustration are in your way, you're going to begin to lean into the virtue of love. And you can do this by simply visualizing love. Imagine yourself surrounded by loving, positive energy, or you can project that energy towards someone you love and care about. I want you to try practicing empathy. Try choosing to respond with compassion rather than anger to situations, and you will find that the world begins to feel a bit more loving towards you in response. It's an energetic thing. Now, the next emotion we're going to talk about is anxiety, and I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia for that.
And she's turning it over to me because I've experienced a lot of anxiety in my time. Things for me that came up were speaking at a conference, for example, or doing an activity for the first time with a group of people I don't know. And it would be kind of anticipatory anxiety where I would think about these things and what could go wrong and get anxious about it. And so I learned strategies to help me connect with peace and calm, which is the virtue that is the opposite of anxiety, to help me control that anxiety. And anxiety does have its positive benefits. It can sharpen our focus and attention. It can create a natural response if we need to protect ourselves, right? Fight or flight. And it highlights our areas that need attention in our lives and prompt us to make positive changes. So there's kind of a curve where some anxiety is good, but when it starts to peak and get too high, then it's too much and it can cause a problem. Some of those problems are similar health issues that Kat mentioned with anger, like increased cardiovascular issues, skin problems like acne, if you've ever been anxious and had a breakout, eczema, psoriasis, and headaches, fatigue, and of course, poor sleep quality. When you're anxious, your body's a little keyed up and your mind's going. So calm and serenity, as I mentioned, is the virtue that brings balance here. And you can supercharge leaning into this virtue by first attending to your body, recognizing that you're feeling anxious, recognizing your anxious thoughts, and consciously think, this is a body system reaction. I'm okay. Breathe and calm yourself. And that will help counter that anxiety. And similar to anxiety is worry, which Kat's going to talk about now.
Of course I am, because worry is my emotional nemesis. It's my default mode to basically start turning over in my brain, how can I help the people I care about? And when they've had enough of me, then I turn around and I find this endless list of challenges that my brain wants to worry over and try to solve. Simple things like climate change, the homeless situation, the mental health of our youth. Heck, I even worry about my neighbor's garden. And it's this nonstop mental churning that is exhausting. And even though it's well-intended, the truth is it's not nourishing me at all. So a little bit of worry is okay. It can push us to take action, like maybe planning for a trip, studying for a test that we have. But if we worry about losing something or someone, it could help us feel more grateful for what we have. But the downside is that too much starts to interfere with our ability to focus and our ability to actually make a decision and move forward. And my least favorite is it causes distractions from all the joys of living in the present moment. The good news is trust is the antidote. This could be trust in yourself, your support network, or even in a higher power. In order to lean into this feeling of trust when you need it most to help balance out that worrying, it's helpful to spend some time in advance building up that muscle. So you can do this with a regular Qigong practice, super easy and quick. You're going to start by rooting yourself with a grounding Qigong stance. It is so easy. Just stand up tall, bend your knees a little bit, take a few breaths so that you start to center yourself. That's it. That you're just going to ground yourself and you're already doing Qigong now. Once you get into this stance, then you're going to repeat a mantra that resonates for you. Now, this could be something like, I am supported. And if mantras aren't really your thing, you can spend a few minutes in that grounded place, just thinking about times when things worked out for you, even when you weren't in control. So maybe you volunteered at an event and you had a great time. You weren't in charge of the event, but it went well. Thanksgiving dinner, you show up and the meal's amazing. Heck, every time we go out to dinner, we're not in charge of the kitchen, but when we have a great meal, that is a sign of us trusting that restaurant to provide a good experience and it working out well. So we have two more emotions to talk about. The next one is fear, and I will give that back to Cynthia.
Fear is something I'm sure we've all experienced at some point. I'll use an example from my own life. A simple one, I had a fear of investing. I just didn't want to lose my money. I'd rather stick it all under my mattress if I could.
Yep.
And just, know that it's there. But that's not something that was helpful, So fear is really a primitive response. It's a nervous system response. It was meant to save you from the tiger jumping out about to eat you, the fight or flight response that we hear about. And it can immobilize you as well as help you get away and run, etc. But we don't want to become immobilized in our everyday lives and not take action. So, for example, in my case of the investing, what I did to counter that was I learned about investing my money, how to do it, what are the options. I talked to some investment professionals, and I found ways to do it that were comfortable for me. So it's very bio-individual in terms of what each person's comfortable with, but you can find something. So I had to educate myself, and it worked out. As we've mentioned with the other areas here, there is some good side to fear. So fear, as I mentioned, it's a survival instinct. So if you really were in danger, you'd want to have some fear and get away.
Yep.
It can be a key motivator to push us to achieve our goals and to overcome challenges. It can focus us on the present moment and allow us to assess situations. And when we do that, we can make better decisions. And it can even strengthen our social bonds when we share something that we're fearful of, share that experience with someone else. It can help create a strong bond there. So the downside of fear is that fight or flight response that can release hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And if you recall from episode 2, that's the food of choice for Cordy, the stress zombie. And it will increase your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your breathing becomes erratic. Similar health issues, as we've already mentioned, with the heart, digestion, and immune system. And as I mentioned, you can become immobilized and start to avoid things in your life, withdraw from people, and seek unhealthy coping mechanisms. You don't want that to happen. Remember, these emotions are energy. If we think about fear as energy, then the virtue of knowledge and understanding will give that fear direction, like my learning about investing. It'll help you use the energy of that fear to assess situations and make better decisions. So knowledge and understanding will move you out of that fight or flight response and into action for better well-being. The next time you find yourself feeling a limiting fear, supercharge that and give it direction. And the last emotion we're going to talk about is grief and sadness.
Yep. So a key point in my journey was when I began to really understand how grief and sadness were living in my mind and my body, but also how they rooted their way into my decision-making. These are the emotions that I most often found were holding me hostage from what I really wanted. Because grief and sadness is not just about losing someone. It can be about losing a part of ourselves, an identity we had, or a dream we worked towards. They can be tied to a trauma that separated us from who we thought we were or wanted to be. And in my opinion, these are the sleeper emotions that we don't realize we have too much of. Now, I've had my fair share of grief and sadness. I'm sure most of the listeners have. And like me, you may have also tried to pack them up in a box so that you didn't have to feel them. But these guys, they have their place too. They force us to confront our values and our priorities. They help us really hone in on what we love most, and they can provide a deeper understanding of who we are. When you get through the other side of them, you will have built up mental and emotional strength and know that you can handle the future with more emotional resilience. So experiencing these emotions can also help us feel more attuned to the emotions of others and honestly, a bit less judgy. So too much, you guessed it, it's not good for you. In my personal case, it causes me to numb out and then I don't get to feel anything. Yuck. It can also swing the other way and it can cause our emotions to be too intense. Have you ever laughed at a funeral?
I actually have.
Quietly raised my hand. So it can swing both ways. For me, this one is another emotion where I feel like our body inherently understands the virtue that I should be leaning into. So let's take a second to think about it. When we feel grief and sadness, it feels like a weight that's holding us back. Like we can't stand up tall and we feel really inside of ourselves. So if we literally do the opposite, stand up tall and take a deep breath, then we can start to fight back that feeling, because that standing up tall is our step towards reclaiming our confidence. And that is the virtue that we're talking about here. Confidence in living in alignment with your values. So we call it integrity when we talk about it in traditional Chinese medicine. So how can you practice this? Well, you can borrow mine. Breathing while standing tall, 100%. But if you want to go a little further, which I suggest we all do, start to choose one small action each week that really reflects your values and who you want to be and helps you speak your truth, even if it's just to yourself. Standing in front of a mirror and telling yourself something like, I'm loved, I'm a well person, I'm healed. You could even journal these things. And once you start to give it to yourself, then you're going to be able to put it out for the world and you're going to start to make choices that honor who you want to become. because that is the version of yourself that's confident and lives with integrity. We just explored a lot. So let's take a moment to reflect. Which emotions hit home for you? What sage advice of ours felt good? Because this reflection, this intentional awareness of how you responded to these words, that's your first step. This week, your Say Yes challenge is simple. Choose one of the 5 pairings. You can look in the workbook for it. Practice the virtue every day in a small way. Write it on a sticky note, make it your phone background, whisper it in the mirror. Whatever you do, just keep it close.
And if you want to dive deeper, you can grab our companion workbook that Kat mentioned for this episode. It's got all the great info we shared here and a bonus or 2 for you.
It is free, but if it brings you value, we welcome whatever value you want to assign to it because that exchange helps us keep sharing this work. One last thing, if you're one of the lovely humans out there that are going through this sort of lost feeling because of a change in your life, we are here to tell you, you are not broken. You're just in between who you were and who you're becoming, and that's okay. Because this space that you have right now to do that, it's sacred. Lean into it.
And we really hope today helped you feel a little more seen and a little more supercharged.
Yep. Next time, we're shifting gears to talk about holistic hacks for workday sanity. Spoiler alert, your inbox is about to get supercharged. If this episode resonated, please share the wealth of health by liking and subscribing to our channel, and let us know your favorite virtue shift in our private Facebook group. Lastly, remember, this is your journey. It's all about taking these small, meaningful steps towards a healthier, happier you, full color. Until next time, say yes to your well-being and take care. The content of this podcast is for educational, informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a licensed healthcare provider before beginning any new health practice. Do not ignore or delay seeking medical advice because of something shared in this episode. If you're experiencing a medical emergency, call 911 or visit your nearest emergency room. Listening does not create a practitioner-client relationship. Yes to Holistic Health makes no guarantees regarding outcomes based on the information provided. Copyright notice, Yes to Holistic Health, all rights reserved. This content may be shared for nonprofit educational purposes with credit to Yes to Holistic Health. No commercial use without written permission.